Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Build, Burn, Become. Like life, this podcast, it changes with the seasons, and today's episode, I think we can certainly say that a change of focus onto the first responders' health and wellness lifestyle is a very good focus point for us. Being a firefighter for 16 years now, and having spent the past 27 years involved in the fitness world, I want to bring only the best and most helpful information to you. So remember that you don't have to be a firefighter or an EMT or a police officer in the military or anything like that to glean anything from this podcast. This here podcast is really for everybody. Because at the end of the day, the lifestyle, the health and wellness challenges are all the same for everyone. And for the common individual who isn't trying to bodybuild for a stage competition or, say, a strongman competition or anything like that, really just wants to look and feel better and ultimately wants longevity. And that's longevity not only in their lifespan, live longer, but also as well as their careers. And again, you don't have to be a first responder. You don't have to be a nurse or military personnel. You might be a construction worker, right? You want lifespan, longevity in your career. So if you take a look around the vast information portal known as the internet, you can easily find a large assortment of video and reading material on the subject of what is called the tactical athlete. The tactical athlete. What the hell is that? Well, today's episode is exactly on that subject. And when we are done here, this information too will be added to the information highway that we have all come to know and love. So let's break it open here on today's episode, The Tactical Athlete. Essentially, I started finding out this information online, just like you will too when you go to look it up. Maybe you know about it already. But, this is something I took keenly to right away. Because I'm a big believer in mindset, how you view yourself, how you view the world around you, your perspective. And if you have a certain perspective, if you have a certain mindset, you can develop yourself in profound ways. So, essentially I'm saying tactical athlete. That sounds almost crazy, maybe to you, but who or what is a tactical athlete? That's what we're going to talk about here. We're also going to cover statistics for injuries on the job, and we're also going to cover, sadly enough, statistics for deaths on the job. And then, again, I want to analyze the mindset or the perspective behind the tactical athlete concept and, give you some basic ideas of how to get started. So, who or what is a tactical athlete? Tactical athlete refers to military. That's kind of where it comes from, as well as first responders. So you're going to have firefighters, police, and EMS. EMS and nurses, you could kind of say are more like occupational athletes, but let's keep that all into one, under one roof here. It will be easier to, it's what we're doing is we're talking about changing or relabeling. Relabeling what you do for a career will help shift the perspective of how the occupations are approached with a different mindset. It will be easier to imagine themselves as a person operating as at an athletic level. With an athletic mindset, first responders will develop a lifestyle change that is conducive to living in athletic occupation. So, if you're carrying heavy, unevenly distributed weight, if you're working in awkward positions, which you almost always are, working in those high stress, high demand environments, harsh weather conditions. In the fire service, we have IDLH atmosphere, which is incident dangerous to life and health. For military and for police, it's sort of like a battleground that they're operating in. EMS, you're going into people's houses. They might be tight and cramped quarters where, again, you're lifting and moving sometimes very large individuals, and it's always an awkward position. Various police situations out in the street, or in an area where there's a lot of obstacles and things like that. You're adding an element of danger where you could get bodily harm from, and essentially you have to operate and perform your job at a level of professionalism, get the job done, mitigate the emergency, apprehend the suspect, basically take care of business, and you're doing it in not so great of an environment. And that's going to really put that super high demand on you that really start thinking about it. What are you doing here? This is not just like a regular job where you could back off for a second, reposition, get a better foothold, not necessarily least all the time. So you want to think about the types of injuries, right, we're sustaining. The stats for police injuries on the job, the stats for a firefighter, EMS, you can look them up yourself. There's various agencies reporting pretty close to similar things. And, it's which type of injury is most common in policing? This is important. You're a police officer. What is most likely the thing that's going to get you hurt? The most common body site of injury was the upper extremity. The most common injury type were soft tissue sprains and strains, and the most common cause of injury was a non-compliant offender, often involving assault. Okay, so you're in a fight with somebody, and that's where you're most likely going to get hurt. What kind of injury is it going to be? Is it going to be one that puts you out for your whole career? Is it going to be one that you can't play with your kids on the floor now? I think you're an athlete. I think you're putting yourself out there. So as we go through this, think about an officer who is physically trained better than their counterpart. More strength, more durability, better mobility, better stamina, work power. Who's going to take the hit when, the shit hits the fan? The better trained police officer, the athlete, is going to most likely endure, whereas his or her counterpart may actually sustain that injury. So now let's move on to stats for firefighters' injuries on the job. The major types of injuries that occurred during fireground operations were strains and sprains. Sounds familiar. We just talked about that with the police officers. This accounted for 48% of the injuries. Wounds, cuts, bleeding, bruises accounted for 15%, and smoke and gas inhalation accounted for 7%. I'm glad that 7%. That's, we should get that number lower if we can. But I'm glad that's the lowest number out here. That means the guys are wearing their masks, they're on air, and they're not opening themselves up to breathing in from the IDLH atmosphere. And then I mentioned harsh weather conditions. So 5% of injuries occur from thermal stress or frostbite, heat exhaustion, and frostbite. That was 5%. Now, let's see. EMS workers, a lot of EMS workers, they wind up with back injuries, and nurses too. That's a very common thing. Basically, it's from lifting patients. And like I said earlier, you're lifting a patient. A lot of them are heavy, and they're laying on a bed. It's an awkward position to lift from. And, you're lifting a human being. You're not lifting like a sack of potatoes. So anybody naturally is trying to be as delicate as they can so that they're not hurting that person. They're already messed up, and it's your job to hoist them up and get them out of the house into the ambulance and off to the hospital, and you don't want to cause any more harm. And, when we're kind of like gingerly trying to lift somebody to protect them, we forget about protecting ourselves. And we use bad form when we lift, and we're in that awkward position. So, yeah, basically, you're leaning over, the weight is far away from your body, and you twist while you're lifting. And you know what? I'm afraid to say none of that is ever going to go away. It's never going to be like you're at the gym and you're deadlifting and your coach is there to, look at your form throughout the whole process and tweak you as you go so that you're lifting with perfect form every time and your feet are perfectly square. It will never happen. It's always going to be in an awkward position when you're lifting a person out of a bed. It's just par for the course. So the problem is we still have to get them up. We still have to get them out the door. So what do? Well, if you train and you build strength and you get used to operating, on a functional level with weights where maybe you're doing maneuvers where you're twisting and stuff like that, you're going to make yourself more durable. And I want you to remember that word, durable or resilient. You want to toughen up your body. So back injuries actually account for 20% of all workplace injuries in the United States alone. So we're talking everybody right now. A particular problem in EMS where at any given time, nearly 10% of the workforce is out of work from an injury. As a result, nearly 25% of all EMS workers experience career-ending back injuries within the first 4 years of their career. So they're young, they just started working, and they're already out the door because their back is blown out. Consider this, that if an EMS personnel were to end their career with a back injury, then what's next? What career do they go into after that? If they can't work in a physical job, that limits what they can do. So we could get into the idea that anyone in a physical job should have a backup plan. That means they find a career, say, that isn't physical. If they go out and get a degree in finance, for example, that may be great and it will all work out. But there's nothing guaranteed. Nothing guarantees that they actually find that awesome high pay finance job. You're in a bad spot, especially if you set yourself up to go into first responder career. Did you even really get that degree? And I'm just trying to put it what's the next layer of the onion to peel away? If you blow out your back and you can't work anymore in this particular career, well, you're not going to go into construction. You're not going to go into sanitation. You're not going to go into painting houses because all those jobs are physical, require you to lift, and you have a bad back. So you might not even be able to work on your feet all day. A lot of people with back problems, walking around starts to hurt. So they might have to be in a chair. But like I said, it turns into quite a fiasco or quite an issue. How does it translate down the line from one thing to the next? Getting your back hurt so bad that you can no longer perform in your job pretty much spills over to every other facet of your life, to the point that it can affect your home life with your kids and everything else. So essentially, that's why I wanted to do this episode, and I wanted to talk about something I'm very passionate about, and that's getting into this mindset that, you're an athlete. Now, like I said earlier, there's also deaths that occur on the job, and nobody wants to talk about stuff like this, but it has to be discussed, and it has to be brought to attention. The National Fire Protection Association said that sudden cardiac death was the leading cause of firefighter on-duty deaths in 2015. Firefighter fatalities in the United States, 2015, 68 firefighters died on duty, and 32 were volunteers. And the volunteers, you guys and girls are out there kicking ass, and you're not doing the job for a pay. You're doing it because it's something that's important to you. You feel strongly about it. Why are we having heart attacks out there when a lot of these are avoidable? Because, diet and exercise play a big role. They play a huge role in the outcome. Even if you did have a heart attack, if you work out and eat right, you could actually survive that heart attack. Whereas if you don't do anything, your chances of survival decrease dramatically. I don't have the actual stats on that, but you can look that up yourself. I don't want to make the whole episode about stats, but we know that that's true. For the police department, the Department of Environmental Health at the Harvard School of Public Health, I'm reading it off a slide here. At the Harvard School of Public Health study found that sudden cardiac death accounts for up to 10% of all on-duty police officer deaths. That's a lot. There's a lot of cops hired in this country. Canada too, worldwide, that 10% is a big number. The study found the risk of sudden cardiac death for police officers was 34 to 69 times higher during restraints or altercations, 32 to 51 times higher during pursuits, 20 to 23 times higher during physical training, and 6 to 9 times higher during medical or rescue operations, compared with the risk during routine or non-emergency activities. So, what that's basically saying is when a police officer is doing their job, going after the bad guys, and they're ratcheting up their bodies, their hearts are pumping, their adrenal system is, dumping adrenal hormones, and they're all jacked up and everything, that's when the greater risk of having a heart attack or something, or a stroke, occurs. Well, that's the job we're signing up for, to meet this high stress, high demand situation. If there was a statistic out there that said, football players have a higher risk of heart attack during play, people would be like, what the heck is going on here? I mean, this is there's something going on. Like these guys are playing a sport and they're putting their bodies in jeopardy. They would discover that there's health issues. They're not taking care of their bodies, and therefore they would fix it. Well, they already operate as athletes, and they extensively train, and their bodies are developed to handle that high stress, high demand. That's why I am adamantly trying to push this idea of tactical athlete across to you, because essentially this mindset can prevent a lot of that. As far as EMS deaths are concerned, they're not that likely to have issues on the job. Some EMS workers sometimes they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. They might get shot or stabbed or something like that. Would tactical athletic training help them in those areas? Maybe. I mean, it's kind of hard to say that an EMS worker is going to be able to dodge a bullet because they were doing kettlebell swings. But, being able to physically protect themselves from somebody, maybe, yeah. So, if you have a mindset of being an athlete for any one of these careers and you pursue it with gusto, and that means nutrition and everything else, it's a dedicated lifestyle, because you're talking about your whole career. What are we talking? 20 to 30 years? Some people 35 years. But what's wrong with that? I don't really see what's wrong with that. It's actually a great way to live your life. It's, basically being healthy. And what's wrong with being healthy? So after all that, the stats and figures and everything, I'm not trying to bum everybody out, but, essentially that's important stuff to think about as we get into understanding, well, how do you start a tactical athlete mindset / program? Well, first of all, take everything that I'm saying about tactical athlete and, I don't know, don't throw it out the window, but let's stop and pause and think about what I'm basically saying. And underneath it all is do something. Just start. I know it sounds odd to think of yourself as an athlete. I know it sounds odd to think that for the next 20 or 30 years, you are going to be drinking electrolyte shakes and eating grilled chicken and going to bed at 8 o'clock every night and waking up and training and exercise. It's a super extreme concept to wrap your mind around. And I'm certainly not saying people should just turn their lives inside out. But when you want to start anything, I don't care what it is, obviously there's a way to do it. How do you start? The answer is simple. The best way to start is to start. Just do something. I'm not trying to be a dick here or anything. I'm not trying. I just am. But what I'm essentially saying is don't overcomplicate how you get into it. You just find a way to do something and start moving. What's really the best way to start is up to you, but you could get up right now, get outside, and just go for a walk today. You could go for a walk tomorrow. You could go for a walk every single day for the next year if you want. If that's your pace, that's your pace. But are you doing more than you did yesterday? Yes, you are. So that is a plus. And like any good endeavor, anything of quality, of substance that you build up, you build up over time. It takes time to develop something that's worthwhile. Consistency, a little bit of discipline, find ways to get motivated via, reading materials, hook up with a friend or something at the gym that could help you. Essentially, just get started. But think about it. Over time, today is just a walk, and maybe tomorrow's just a walk. But next year, it's a triathlon or a Tough Mudder or even an Ironman. No, you say? You say that can't happen in a year? Like hell it can't, because it has. People have literally, in 1 year, gone from 0 to 60 like a bat out of hell, and have gone into major competitions such as the Ironman. I know that that's not everybody now, but the fact that some people can do it just proves what humans are really capable of. So don't say you can't, you can. And, maybe that's another podcast for some other time, to talk about the word can't and change it to I can, the positive, have that positive mindset. But isn't that really what we're going with here today anyway? Looking at yourself as a tactical athlete and saying, okay, I can and I will, and this is going to transform my life. It's going to help my career. It's going to help everything. It's going to wash over every aspect of my life. At the end of the day, it's like going to the doctor's office. They tell you exercise for stress control, for disease control. You could also see exercise for connecting with people. How do you connect with people via exercise? Well, I think we already know, but it's good to go over. Exercise in team sports, team building, making friends, a lifting partner, someone you have to be accountable to, the CrossFit community. That's a pretty sociable community. In fact, that's what most people get attracted to when CrossFit is a big thing. And then how about connecting with your family through exercise? My daughter does gymnastics, and we set up a little basement gym for her alongside my gym. So the whole basement's like this little workout place. I place a dumbbell on her little pink plastic chair, and she pushes it back and forth like a sled. She loves it. It's a game, but the girl's pushing 15 pounds back and forth. Well, so I could keep going on and on with this, but that's pretty much the gist of it, and that's going to be pretty much our MO for this podcast from here on out, to get into discussions about how to become a more athletic firefighter, how to become a healthier policeman, how to become a stronger EMS worker. And like I said, this doesn't just count for first responders and military and nurses. It also counts for everybody out there, because we're talking about functional fitness and something that actually translates over to all facets of life. So thanks for listening, everybody. And before we go, I want to entertain you. I want to ask you to take a look at our sponsors for this here episode. First on the list, we have Muscle Cocktails. If you use code FRED20, you can pick up a really good pre-workout, or some of them, their BCAAs, those branched chain amino acids. They're pretty good. I like using them. And Muscle Cocktails is with a Z on the end. You leave the last S off for savings. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that mattress commercial where they say the last S, and you leave it off for savings. I'm biting right off of that. I'm taking it. That's mine now. And also, check out one of my faves here, Balls and Pits Body Powder. Balls and Pits. I think it's an awesome name. I love it. You can basically put this anywhere you want. You could even put it on your, well, it's in the name. I keep a couple bottles of Balls and Pits at home in the car, and I have it at the firehouse, where I'm not ashamed to say I actually used it once for a full body bath. One shift, it was just like one of those shifts in the summertime, and I pretty much doused it all over me, just so I didn't stink the rig up and make the guys in the rig want to puke. So it got me through that shift pretty good, and later on I was able to get a shower when things quieted down. But check those guys out, Balls and Pits and Muscle Cocktails. I will see you guys next time. I will talk to you next time, and we are raring to go because you are in for a surprise. We have some great stuff coming up. I'm looking forward to 2019, and we're going to have tons of information, great podcast for you, a whole new lineup coming. I'm not going to say anymore. I want you to be in anticipation, and I want you salivating at the mouth for that next chomp into this juicy steak of a podcast Bill Byrne become. All right, I'm leaving. Bye.